Hi everyone, good morning. This is or afternoon, depending on where you are. But today we're going to talk about thriving through transformation. We're doing it in a webinar style, but you are all able to unmute yourself, and I can put you in as panelist if you want to talk or anything or to be on video. But I just want that we can have more of a dialogue and go through this topic. And I do have some a PowerPoint, some presentation, but in reality, if you have a conversation, you have some topics you want to cover within this subtopics under this umbrella conversation, would love to hear your thoughts and your suggestions as we go through this. And anyone who wants to unmute yourself or make a comment, feel free. Today, we're going to be talking about thriving through transformation. This is inspired by a panel I was on with Ayla in Boston in early November, right? And it was planned to be even before we knew the election results, and it was very timely. And I think this really brings in a lot of things as I was preparing for presentations during the pandemic and just times of change. And the thing is that there's a lot of change going on even regardless. Many of those watching are immigration attorneys, but they could be practicing another area of law, and the changes that are going to be happening with administration, however that impacts your practice. But also, there's the impact of everything from AI and a lot of different changing factors that are going on in just the work environment. And so anyway, I do want it to be more of a conversation. So please feel free to, you can do a chat for everyone, so everyone can see your question. You can unmute yourself. You can, to let me know if you want to be on video and have more conversation and share something on video. Feel free. Okay, so we'll go ahead and continue. So a lot of you have probably heard of me before. I'm a board-certified immigration attorney in Texas with Powers Law Group, and I've written two books about law practice management. My most recent one is Power Up Your Practice, Create the Law Firm and the Life You Deserve, and it's available on Amazon. I will put a link there. And we also have a really great podcast called Power Up Your Practice as well, and we'll put a link to that. But we're always looking for guests and suggestions, or if you're interested in being on. And we're recording pretty much every Tuesday afternoon, and constantly we have already was is it I think 40. mm, we just recorded the 50th episode yesterday, so I think we have about 48 or so, 49 out there online. So we're excited. We started that about a year ago. Okay, so really, it's really a lot about mindset. I mean, and anyone who wants to talk, Yvonne, Rebecca, Salmina, Parker, Anna, feel free. Love to get your feedback. But there's the constantly evolving landscape of what's going on. And they say like the only constant is change. I think a lot of times, there's like those unspoken rules of how things work, and you finally figure them out, and then they're changing. I For example, I remember a long time ago, figuring out that Google ads were like awesome. In my opinion, back in like the 2010, 11, but then they got more complicated. And just in my case, I decided to stop them this last summer, and I'm taking a different approach. But those things are changing. I think there's so much danger in just setting and forgetting. I've seen that happen, and I mean I've been guilty of that. And so if we just sort of set something and like that infomercial, set it and forget it, and we think that there's nothing that we need to do afterwards, we're going to be in danger. I remember even going to ABA Tech Show in 2019, looking around like all the shiny objects, and I was like, oh my gosh, the tech is amazing. I'm so excited. And because I had just gotten my tech stack and thought it was pretty good and really didn't change much. And what's also dangerous about that is that you're not evaluating what is the vendor. improving? Are you getting constant updated and training? And I will just say the tech space has completely it's a whole nother thing, since when I started my firm back in 2009. And now you need experts and consultants to help you, I feel like, with all the robust ability, that is out there. So there's changes in, regulation, there's changes in the client environment and their, take on things. During the pandemic, people were able to just there was changing in the way they did shopping from interacting online to it became more commonplace to be okay with doing online and Zoom phone calls, all those types of things. But I had been doing probably many of you had been doing those in the past before. But those became a little bit more commonplace. I also seen a lot in the legal space that we blame our reasons, our excuses for not changing are a lot because we say the clients are not ready for the change. But I don't know about you. I feel like a lot of times it's because us, the owners or the attorneys, the legal profession, are not really willing and able to do the change. And we're sort of like, we got enough going on here. I can't handle it, so I'm not going to do that. But the thing is like, that's not the right approach. So I think one big takeaway is to have that a mindset of constantly improving, like Kaizen, the Japanese concept of Kaizen, and to constantly be being having the paradigm of adaptability so that you don't just get stuck in one way and then wake up one day saying, oh wait, I shouldn't have done that. Then like everyone's far ahead of me, I didn't adapt, I wasn't prepared for that. I mean, just that other example I've used before, and you've probably heard, is like just the whole, Blockbuster and Netflix reached out to them and said, "Hey, let's team up, and you have the brick and mortar, we have this DVD thing over here." And then Blockbuster's like, "No, we enjoy our charging for rewind fees." And I'm paraphrasing, but anyway, so they said no, and look what happened. Amazon, I mean, Netflix is like freaking making amazing movies and shows all over the world, and nobody, like, I don't think if I were to ask my kids what's Blockbuster, they probably don't even know what that is, and they're like 11 and 14, I mean, 12, yeah. So, and then you think about like Bezos and Amazon. I mean, he originally it was the online book sales, but he didn't say online book sales. He thought big and he called it Amazon. And then now, you can be thinking about being able to going to a little store in an airport without using your credit card and just walking in and buying to AWS with storage, which a lot of our case management software are using, to what is it, like all the other things that Bezos is up to. But originally, starting off with Amazon from Washington Post and was it Blue something, I don't know, his space adventures. But anyway, just being able to see the future, being able to adapt, and so we're going to talk about some practical strategies. But I am willing to hear from everyone. Whoever wants to give advice, suggestions, put it in your chat. Oh, and mute yourself. And just having that healthy dose of confidence that you can do it, but then at the same time know that you're constantly learning, like CLEs and webinars and reading and podcasts, because that's what's really important to constantly be improving. So as we, the practice of tomorrow is definitely changing. We've seen that from the ability to from those to be able to have online filings to web hearings to e-filing, yeah, e-signatures to be accepted, to the client adaptability to not having to see you in person. So when even just one of those things changes, it can have a huge ripple effect. I mean, just the whole part about being able to use an e-signature or e-filing for immigration court, for example. I mean, that's huge. Before we had to have somebody who would run around to all the courts and locations, and some people aren't even in the same city that the court is, or having to mail and wait for that. But now you can file something the day of, especially if it's like due that day, for example, but you want to be careful with that, right? And that's one example. Or the copy of a wet signature being acceptable. That wasn't the case when I ran my law firm from Dubai. It was huge. It was huge hassle to have to keep tabs on where's the wet signature and making sure that that was submitted. And when I was living in another country. Um, and then, so just one or two little change like that can have a huge ripple effect, or being able to have WebEx hearings, or now we have clients all over the country, and because we know it's not so cost prohibitive for them to fly us to that hearing. And so we have the policy changes, which we're all bracing ourselves for on January 20th, which, those of us who practice under Trump, I'm just going to call it 1.0, have a pretty good idea of what to expect, but we think this will be probably more intense. But everyone's a little bit smarter and more knowledgeable and wiser, so we'll see what happens. But then there's also the client's perspectives or expectations are changing. And going back to the Amazon example, when you think about how you can just like, I have an idea. I want, I don't know, let's see, filter for coffee, something, because we ran out. I think about it. I get on my little Amazon app, boom, 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 and then pretty soon I might even get it today because I'm in a big city. And I get a little picture when the person drops it off. Like that is what our clients are used to. So when they hire us and then it takes a while to get a response or an we're open the case or what's the next, they get a little freaked out. And that's hard for us in the legal space because just a lot of the things, regulations, the rules and procedures and the things we've had to deal with were not made it so conducive for that instant gratification that now the client's expecting. And so, but then you add the whole other component of AI being out a lot more mainstream the last 2 years. I mean, it's been out for a long time, but like let's just use ChatGPT for example. And of course, there's other things out there, Gemini, Claude, a whole bunch of other stuff, and it's incorporated in a whole other bunch of programs. Um, but that is a huge game changer, to the point that, like, I don't know, feel free to put in the chat, 1 to 10, 10 being like you're using AI all the time. One, you're like, what is that? Go ahead, put in the chat like how much you're using it with your practice so we can get a feel for that. Like for us, we're pretty much using it everywhere we can. And if someone's not using it, I'm as a staff member, I'm sort of thinking, why are you not using it? Because I know if you use it, you'll be able to save time. And I think about that in the competitive environment because those who are using it, implementing it, are going to be able to uh, do a whole lot for less amount of time and be able to move. Oh, okay. Okay, sorry, the chat is disabled. I don't know if April, you could fix that. But people are putting it in the Q&A. Thank you. So we have 5 or 6 was put for one person. So that's pretty good. Thank you for putting that. I think we might be able to fix the chat while we're live. Um, okay, so someone says they're a 7 or 8. Well, definitely feel free to when we get a little bit more into the tech space, let's give some ideas about that. That's awesome. So, and those are the types of things that is going to have a huge impact for those who are not you implementing those things right now. Then you're going to be behind those who are. And because I look at it sort of like a muscle. The more you use it, the more you're having experience with it, and then the more your team is going to be able to be efficient. And so that's what we're seeing here. Um, and the more you have the mindset of constantly improving, the more you cross-train your team, the more you are building a culture like, hey, we've got this. We're not going to let this take us down. Though then you're going to be able to have that ability to be able to weather any storm. And the other thing to note is we might be doing this um, a week before the Trump goes into office. But at the same time, I'm just going to make everybody a panelist if they want to be to say anything and make sure we don't have any chat problems or anything. But if you want to. But also it's because I mean there's fires in LA. there's earthquakes, there's freezes. We got a freeze coming to the country this coming week. We've got hurricanes in Houston all the time, or in, we hit North Carolina, Florida, some places that normally don't get hit, like in spaces of North Carolina. And we have to be able to roll with the punches and do the best we can. And so this is just all about that adaptability and planning for the unexpected. I used to teach this course with Houston Community College, and it was the minimizing risk, basically. And what we did is we made, through that course, we made a list of all the things that could possibly go wrong. So I was like, well, this is not the most happy course to teach, but actually at the beginning, I walked through all the like 12 or 13 things that could go wrong in different spaces like government regulation to client bad reviews or brand management to an employee that goes rogue, or there were other ones like a distributor who changes the quality of the product, or if you have too much dependence on one client, or those types of things. So we walk through all these possible things that could go wrong. And then each business owner was to make a list as to what's the most likely that could happen to their practice. And then in doing so, what happened was then they were supposed to write what would you do to combat that? And so we walk through all the different things, like we talked about insurance, or making sure you're monitoring reviews on a regular basis, or trying to improve your quality customer service. Uh, Having things online, having backups, having cross training. So for everything that was most likely that could go wrong, what would you do to combat it? And then they were supposed to prioritize what of all these things, which the most likely in order. And you know what happened at the end of the class? It was like a day-long class. They actually felt more confident. Felt more secure. They felt like I've got this. So we started the class with like, oh my gosh, maybe I shouldn't be a business owner. To at the end, it was like, I've got this. And there's so much power in that. Like you don't want your brain to go, oh, all the possible things that can go wrong, and just like in a vacuum and go down that worry wart death spiral, not having a plan to combat it. No, no, no. You don't want to do that, because that's a bad rabbit hole as a business owner, which we are less risk averse than normal people as an entrepreneur and everything. But what you want to do is you say, okay, this could go wrong, but I'll have a solution for it. So I like to bring this up because I think it's a really great exercise. And if you've never done something like that, big corporations, mid-sized ones, they do this all the time. But I think a lot of small firms, small businesses don't do them. And so I'll just give you an example. We get hurricanes here. So how do we overcome it? Well, you don't have anything that's important originals, right? Everything's digital, or you don't hold on to originals. You be able to have a flexible work like balance. Like even before the pandemic, we were already doing some hybrid sometimes because of hurricanes. And then the other thing is diversify your clientele, so that like if you get hit with a hurricane and your clients get hurt with hurricanes, make sure you have clients that aren't in the same place, so that they're not as impacted as well. So diversifying. So that was just like one example. So these unanticipated changes can disrupt even the most stable practices, but in reality, you can think of a lot of scenarios that could happen and how you would combat them. So I would suggest, and one of the things I like to talk a lot about in these types of CLEs or webinars and things like that, is make a to-do list and block off some time to go implement this, because otherwise it's just going to go in one ear and out the other, and you're not really going to have some time to reflect. So what would you, if this is an exercise you think you should do, I would block off some time, maybe like an hour at a minimum, and just walk through what are all the things that could go wrong and how would you combat them, and then make a to-do list of, and also remember, you don't have to do this by yourself, but like assign people in your team to help you walk through what that would mean to improve. So some of the things, we'll go into some more detail, but like cross-training staff to ensure flexibility. That's the other thing, is if you have like too much of a right hand, that is the only hasn't cross-trained, hasn't written out their procedures, doesn't, holds on to the, either it for whatever reason, maybe they're holding on to power, they don't write it down, they don't cross-train, or what have you. Make sure you're not dependent on just one employee, just like you wouldn't want to get most of your revenue from one client. Make sure that you have probably two or three people who can do the same job in the office. Like, for example, contract writing. Last Friday or whatever day it was, like two out of the three contract writers were gone. And so we were slowed down to a trickle. So we're cross-training more people, including the attorneys, to make sure that they know how to use it in our CRM. Or like we're cross-training one of our legal assistants who does a lot of advocacy. We're teaching other legal assistants how to do advocacy so that we have at least two or three people who can do the same type of case. Also, diversifying your practice is really important. Like I remember during times in the past, because my firm's 15 years old, that court was really slowed down. So I leaned into maybe like family or like court was down during parts of the pandemic and during parts of Trump. But we were on hourly retainers, so we were able to still do some things at the time. Then, employment's gone well sometimes and been easier or a little bit more challenging during the Trump era, or family, or even like processing times. Like maybe you could do the thing and there was a demand, but because it was taking, I don't know, a waiver of 4.5 years, for example, you couldn't move to the next level of the process. And so, it's like those cases were, or even affirmative asylum cases, for example, that from pending from 2015, 16, 17, 18, who've just, and so what we started doing was doing mandamuses to move those cases along. So always trying to find other opportunities and cross-training and diversifying are very important. So that building transferable skills and cross-training is super important. And what I mean by that is you want to be building up your staff in a lot of different ways. It's a win-win-win. Like it's always fun to find one of those situations, right? So you want to be thinking of ways like how can and these different skill sets can be things like management, delegation, or speaking and presenting, client services, and then you also the other immigration, I mean, the legal aspects from, advocacy, family-based immigration court, asylum. So it could be for skill sets and practice areas. And I think I find that I've been really working on growing my leadership level team and then also trying to make sure that everyone rises together because there I think sometimes people are timid like, oh, I've never done that, or oh, I can't do that, but you're like, no, 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 you can do that, and pushing them along, because then when they realize that they can, then they're like, oh, well, maybe I can do more, and I can do more, and you can help grow, and that management is so important. So the cross training, growing your team, and making sure that you're able to adapt to those different things that are going to happen. And also the cross training is and the transferable skills can include also like AI training as well. So some people would say like maybe diversifying your practice because things could change. Like maybe people will try to file more things pro se in one area, so maybe you need to develop another area. These are do you want to do because maybe some things have gotten a little bit simpler and people are trying to do the clients are trying to do them on their own potentially. And so how do you find your niche? So I my practice is full service immigration, but within that, I feel like it's like four, five, six different firms because of the different practice types within immigration. Some people added different practice types in addition to one area, or try to open new offices or targeted clients in different parts of the country. So these are things to consider, but it's also important to be realistic as to what you're capable of doing and what might be overexerting yourself. So those are some things to consider. Um, Now, the other thing to note would be to and feel free anybody who wants to chat, get on video, do anything to share notes, please do so. So I think, like for example, one of the things I did to diversify was having those different areas within immigration, but also expanding on the mandamus recently. Those were some of the things that we did to diversify. Um, we have a question. What are your thoughts on the role of YouTube as a social media platform in the next 10 years? Is it worth investing some time into it? Um, I think so. I think that it's look, we've got this whole eh, this is a good question right here because we're talking about some of these client connections and also the communication with clients. Okay. So we are at the precipice of TikTok potentially going away in the US. We don't know at this moment on January 15th whether what's going to happen. Um, but there's a lot of people on TikTok. Then a lot of those people who have people on TikTok are saying go over to the other platforms. So people have been getting fed up with X. And so a lot of those people a few weeks ago or so were going over to Blue Sky. And then you get some people are upset with Zuckerberg recently, and so I saw somebody say, "Let's boycott Meta," and I'm like, okay, so that would be Instagram and Facebook. So then what's left? Pretty much you got YouTube. Now of course, we don't know what's going to happen over here on TikTok land, and not everybody is on it. Like I was talking to a marketing expert who does work with a lot of firms, and she says none of our firms do TikTok. And but it's because it depends on your clientele whether or not you're going to do that. And then you've got people who just don't advertise or promote or communicate on Facebook or Instagram. But the thing is that YouTube has been growing for many years as a resource, and I think that at a minimum you should be on about two or three different social media platforms, and because you don't know, you could be at the moment like I'm just mentioning right now, where like I have like 22,000 followers on TikTok. I really don't want TikTok to go away because I love their algorithm and I love their way. I mean, that's just the immigration side of me, not just like some of the other things that people have been able to share information wise, and some people have learned so much the last few years with TikTok. Um, so that was a long-winded way of saying is I think it's worth it. And I am glad that I've been posting on there for more than 10 years and I have a lot of content from the past. And I think that it's definitely one of the ones that people go to because you can do long form, short form, and if you get a lot of followers too, you can get compensation for it as well. But what I like about bring that question along this time is that it's also talking about the client relationships. So for us, we're able to communicate through newsletter every other week in English and Spanish. We do two webinars every week in English and Spanish. Um, with our chain, I mean, along this little line here, we do have case management software that has client portals, so we're implementing those shortly. But those newsletters, whether or not they're an existing client or a former client, we're still communicating with people there. And honestly, that's what made me feel confident that I could, well, after I experimented, that I could survive without the Google ads and the Facebook ads and the Instagram ads because we had the newsletter and we had so much history of happy clients and keeping them in the fold, and our CRM with the pipeline and the drip campaign and things like that. But we do I think this is really important, especially in times of change. Like if we were say it from the immigration attorney perspective, we're going to lean into our newsletter, our webinars, all of our social media platforms, because we want to be able to be a resource. During the pandemic, when there was so much uncertainty, those who came out there and were a resource and were there for people in a time of need, that wasn't forgotten. People were very grateful. And just in general psychology, there's a reciprocal uh concept of, if someone did that for me, then I want to do something for them, whether or not that was the intention or not. And so, but it does build that trust, the empathy and transparency. And even though you're spending a lot of time on giving information out for free, which those people might not ever hire you, but it does build goodwill. And so anyway, I think that whether we're talking about social media or we're talking more about the client relationships specifically, this communicating, being a resource for them is super important. Okay, so let's anybody who wants to unmute themselves or put more in the chat about how you're using technology in general, AI specifically. We had a couple of people saying 7, 8. Feel free to put, unmute yourself, put yourself on video, whatever you want to tell us. Love to hear your perspectives on that. And so using, like, for example, in the admin space, making sure that you have as many templates as possible and you automate a lot of the normal communication. In the marketing space, we're using AI to help make clips of videos, to make copy for posts. You can even just on ChatGPT alone, you can go in and help and have it help you make a LinkedIn post with all the cute little icons and stuff. It can help you take I could take the audio of this, turn it into a transcript, say, make this into a blog article, a regular article. Um, and those are just some things. Okay, I've got more, but William, why don't you feel free to share some of your tips?
Sure. So I think that AI, like you mentioned, is a game changer. I've got the ALA stuff that Greg Siskin invented or created or whatever it was he did with it.
Uh-huh.
That is definitely worth the subscription. It is ever so helpful. I basically treat it like a law clerk and just
Okay.
try to come up, I've done some things to help fully develop a little bit of AI skill as far as chats and the queries and all that are concerned. As a matter of fact, each week I try to spend a little time just doing whatever with AI. It could be I was looking for a new pillow. And so I said, find a pillow that's got good ratings and all. I turned it into a chart and I'm kind of practicing those skills. But the stuff that Greg Siskin has, it really has saved me a ton of time. And if I've got something I'm not really sure about, I can do a quick search, get a little bit of a response back, and then I can put my paralegal onto it and say, okay, this is your starting point. Let's see what else, check the sources, make sure everything's right, and then tell me if we're on the right track with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think he has his Visa Gen. Uh, he has a couple, and he has something with a sandbox, like, for other areas of law. And then he also had that Bitly list of, like, his what immigration attorneys can use AI for. And I was reviewing that recently. It was pretty exhaustive. And honestly, what you said is another thing you mentioned that really I think is a key point is you've got to go out and experiment and practice and try it out. Like, sometimes I feel like I'm talking a lot about it and I haven't had enough time blocked off to just go play around with it. But I love the fact that I'm, like, doing things like this, or I'm going to, I went to, like, 4 legal tech conferences last year, and, like, all the different I and all the podcasts I do, I talk to lots of people and they're always sharing ideas. Like, one was like Notebook LM, and some Matthew Kurbis was telling me something really cool about that. And I was just like, oh, okay, I need to go play around with that. Or but yeah, I think the idea is that you constantly explore what can be done more efficiently, faster, more better in any capacity. Like, it's quite fascinating. Um, and then that we can pass that savings on to potentially our clients, help us make us more competitive, help us just save time in life in general, and have more of a complete, um, you know, product of some sort.
Yeah, I've
Um,
used it to draft motions. I've used it to
mhm.
draft like memos and give me some citations on cases or the INA or CFR or whatever it might be. And it's been very accurate from my experience. And like I said, that just cuts down on the time. It's just me basically attorney wise in my office. I've got a paralegal and a legal assistant. So time's pretty precious for us when it comes to being able to do research, but getting a jump on it like that really does help.
The other thing I've seen as a trend is that, like, when I started my practice in, like, 09, it felt like that 08, 09 time was this weird place where, like, big law was changing. There was the Great Recession. There was the smart advent of the smartphone. But it was like this moment, where um, it was more possible for a solo to compete with a lot of other firms. And I'm trying to think of what the right word is, but that defining moment. And I feel like we're having another one of those big moments right now where a solo or small firm can truly really be competitive or have a chance versus like some smaller, I mean some bigger firms because AI can be the equivalent of multiple staff members if you use it right. And I was on a mastermind last week and I was saying, you know what? It's funny because I think the old way was you would brag about how many staff members you had as like a badge of honor of something like that. But I know, I know more people doesn't mean more money and more efficiency, and usually, sometimes it can be more headache. But now I think we're going to start seeing the flip side. Maybe that's the way it was in tech, but it wasn't the way it was in law. But now the flip of like I'm able to do everything I do, but with less people because I'm using bots and automation and tech and AI is the buzz sexy word now or whatever, but like I think there's that idea of like today's AI is tomorrow's software. It's just going to be incorporated everywhere, and it's just really we're just talking about technology for the most part and in all the different ways. Um, but any other thoughts? I mean, there's so many other things like using it quickly for a translation, using it to summarize a statement, using it to make a list of questions for court, using it for a draft of anything, an offer letter, a termination letter, a contract or something. I mean, and I think the other theme is it's a good way to have a starting place and then you edit, but it's not that it's the end all be all. And that's where the people who are like, "Oh no, I don't want to get in trouble." Like, yeah, you've got your confidentiality stuff, but you also just know that this isn't the final result. You're going to be reviewing it.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is knowing, excuse me, if you're using multiple AI platforms, what their strengths and weaknesses are. Like
Mhm.
Claude's really, really good from what I've seen at reviewing a PDF and telling you what's in that document. Microsoft is fairly decent about getting current stuff because it's integrated with Copilot, or the Copilot's integrated with their Edge browser. Personally, I thought that Google Bard was great, and then they switched it over to Gemini, and they've gotten kind of behind in my estimation. I just don't find it as helpful. Chat
Mhm.
GPT's got a lot of good features too. I think it's
Yeah.
pretty helpful.
Yeah, I was favoring ChatGPT and like I even with my book I made all my images using one of the image options and like but I have experimented with Gemini because of my G Suite workplace whatever and with drafting emails and just some other things like that. I think the other thing that can be overwhelming is that like humans were just not as adapted. We're not as comfortable with change. And like even just this last 2024, my team changed our case management software after like 15, 14 years. And then it opened up interaction and integration with other case management options like our CRM. It was able to more fully interact. And so then that created a whole much like, okay, now we need to go reevaluate our CRM. And then now we're talking to some other like tech companies that can integrate with some of our other programs. And so I think like I don't know, like I always remember Greg seemed to always have like a tech person in his office. Like it wasn't just like to fix things. It was like to like evaluate how we can use it more efficiently. And I feel like you need like a tech slash operations person, or it needs to be a piece of somebody's job description to be constantly evaluating your tech stack, how you can improve, and to have even there's a lot. It's popular now to even talk about AI policies in your firm and what's your approach to that as well. But did you see the LinkedIn like hot jobs in 2025? Like the top two were AI related. It was like AI engineer and AI consultant. I don't know, something like that. There's a lot happening here. Um, and I would love to mention that the ABA Tech Show is April 2nd to 5th. If anybody is interested in that, I'll be there. So it might be a good place to go to talk about more about this.
I think with the tech stuff, you got to figure out what would fit what you're trying to accomplish. That's part
Yeah.
of it. And to me, I remember I'm old enough. I remember the little handheld Mattel football game that was just the red LEDs, and you could run and do that kind of stuff. And
Uh-huh.
when I got into the practice of law in 1992, we thought, wow, you can use a computer to draft documents and to save them, and you don't have to start all over, and you can keep client info. It's really truly crazy how things have changed. But for me, when I'm looking at something, I ask myself, okay, is this a tool or is this a toy? A toy is cool.
Mm.
It's got bells and whistles and it might be kind of fun and all, but it doesn't really do anything for me. But if it's a tool, I'm thinking, okay, I can see a way or multiple ways to use this to actually make me more efficient, more productive, to get things done better. You know, so I try to look at it that way and decide whether or not I think it's a tool. If it's a tool, then I'm thinking, okay, is it worth the money? What can it do for me? How would I employ it? I don't certainly profess to be a tech expert by any means, but I figure if I can figure out a way to use it, it's worth at least considering.
I think that's a good point. And then the other thing is that, if you've got too many things that you're pulled in different directions and can't do what your base they function is, then you get a little bit overwhelmed. And that's the other thing I'm having to watch with my team is making sure that we're not getting too overwhelmed by all the changes and guiding them in a healthy way of like what needs to get done. One of the things I've noticed is a lot of my talks, it's like, okay, well, this is going to be a meeting another week, another week, another week. And like some of these projects are taking months, but in the end, like you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so that's why I do think it's important to have somebody in your firm that's good at it, like has bandwidth, allowed bandwidth to do it, and can help guide you. Because I think what for a lot of us, I guess regardless of how big our team is or how many people we have available or programs and AI and bots and all that, is it like I'm thinking like Monday I'm going to be slammed with 100 200 executive actions or something, I don't know, and I might not even have the time to really even have this conversation, like I've been saying that to my team, like, let's get this stuff done and let's get organized. But I think that if you create, like, you have the people assigned to things, you create like the intention, you create that culture of exploring, improving, and not, just setting and forgetting it or assuming that you have it all figured out, then you're going in the right direction, even if it could be like on a, incremental process. Um, but I do have to plug ABA Tech Show because I'm on the board. But it's awesome. It's awesome. I get super inspired. And you can also go as an expo hall for free if you want to. It's in Chicago. It's actually the same place, not the same. It's at the McCormick, but it's not. It's in a different convention center of the McCormick that the ALA was at last Chicago. But that's the McCormick. But there's different halls and stuff. But anyway, so it's going to be great. And the other thing I do is I make sure I'm on some newsletters. I listen to a podcast. I follow a few other thought leaders, like we were mentioning Greg and things like that, and making sure that I'm. I also like the legal tech journalists, like Bob Ambrogi, Steve Embry. They do on Friday like 3. I don't know if it's Central or whatever, but I usually watch on YouTube, and they sort of recap what's going on in legal tech space. And so that's another way I find out. But I think a lot of it's just experimenting, having friends to talk about it with, and sharing that community. And there's also the immigration attorneys, there's that technology group that Nadine Heights has as well. So and also Ayla has the Innovation Technology Committee, which I'm on, and that's another way I get to compare notes and things. So I think the other important thing is to keep the community presence in mind. Everything from, communicating with media, nonprofits, schools. This is important. Like in my perspective, going as an immigration attorney going forward after next week, it's important to be able to know what are the nonprofits doing, what are the schools doing, what are the resources, what if somebody can't hire me, but where can they go? For example, I have a nonprofit I've worked with for many years, and they usually get people from ICE delivered to them because of different humanitarian reasons. But I learn a lot from them because the clients that they have, or the people that come to their home, their shelter, are like recent arrivals, and I get some good intel from that because a lot of times clients don't hire me until almost been a year since they arrived, or maybe 6 or 8 months, and so it's a little bit delayed. The contacts I have with the nonprofits helps me because sometimes they can't talk to the media, but I can learn from them and I can talk about things to the media and then I can help everybody and lift everyone in that respect. The being able to I'm working with the Mexican consulate, for example, and they're convening a whole bunch of groups and stakeholders. That's helped open doors with me with law enforcement. I think somehow through one of my speeches, I was able to connect with one of the constables, and that's actually helped us on getting some U visa certifications. And it's just sometimes you don't even know where the connection comes from, but being out there, being a resource, letting people know that you're out there. I was even doing a speech on Monday night to the Mexican American Bar Association. So many people were wanting to volunteer and help out, and I was like, yeah, that's awesome. I need to figure out how to help plug people in, but we're gonna need all that help soon. But anyway, being in this space, having those connections, because it's like the wraparound services. Like even oh, one of the podcasts yesterday was the owner of Attorney Share, and just even having referrals for other attorneys. Like I feel like that's like a part-time job. I never really made it a huge priority, and I realized that it is an important thing for business development, helping the clients and such, like, family law attorneys, ones who speak Spanish, criminal defense attorneys, those who do labor protection. That's actually been another thing that is important because I've seen people get underpaid even though they didn't have status and, the being able to go after the wages. So anyway, the other thing I think we need to be thinking about is that intentional work culture, and the work-life balance. So one of the things I'm going to be doing is more of, during the pandemic, we had some of those like, okay, fun, cutesy things you would do on calls, but I think we're going to have to do that a little bit more, because we do have a hybrid team and we're going to need to keep tabs on people's work life, health, mental health, diversifying the case types your team does so that like they just don't only do asylum, for example, or only do removal because that could be very draining. The other thing I told my team today was I promise you that if I see that a person is not going to be a good fit for our firm, like a super high maintenance, demanding and not a good fit, like, I'm not gonna let them hire us. And I'm saying this out loud because I need a reminder because I this is our policy, but sometimes it's easy to forget that, especially when you're just in the hustle and bustle. And so I think we're gonna remind the admin team, let us know if someone's difficult or you feel like you're not telling the truth or they're being challenging. And then we've also told the legal team do the same thing because we're not going to have time for that. We're going to be trying to help as many people as we can, and we're those outliers are going to drain us, and so we need to make sure that that's part of building that being purposeful about your work culture. And I also building up opportunities for people to grow, lead committees, do presentations, getting feedback, getting people on meetings. I was bringing in the receptionist, and they on a intake or review, and she's like, "Well, I don't know, do I need to be on the next call?" And I was like, we really do value your feedback because you bring things to the table that we weren't even thinking about because you're the one answering the phone and helping guide the clients through the intake." And so she felt great because I said that, but I was truly honest. I don't see things from her perspective, but she's on the front lines. And so like I think those are examples of cultivating that. William, feel free to chat if you that up if you want to. That's fine.
Yeah, talking about that stuff, yeah, there are going to be a lot of people that are panicked and that are in dire straits come next Monday. And I think most of us truly want to help our clients, right? But there are just some clients that aren't a good fit. And I've told people that over the years, look, you know what? I don't have the time and the attention that you deserve to fully devote to your case where we're going to be able to work together. So I think you'd be better off if you hired another lawyer. I mean, you can do it in a nice way
Right.
and even kind of make it sound like you'd kind of like to represent them, even if you don't necessarily feel that inclined. But I, I just it's life's too short. I mean, and as I get older and I've practiced longer, it's just a lot of those cases that look like they're going to be trouble end up that way, and they're just not worth that emotional
Yeah.
drain and all the stuff that goes with it.
You know, um, I think we just need a constant reminder because sometimes you're like, okay, it comes in, it follows the process, you're like, boom, boom, but or also like, oh, I need the money to pay the bills, like let's just take it. But, we even last year, it came to our realization we took a whole bunch of certain type of case, and we were pretty generous with a low bono type of a flat fee, and they were taking advantage of us, and so we ended up wasting a ton of time and firing a lot of them, and then they were all in court, so it took that means there's an added, motions to withdraw and everything. But, I it was such a huge relief once we resolved that, but I it was just another reminder, like, we shouldn't have gotten excited in the frenzy when we thought, "Oh, it's a certain case type, we can handle it, we're helping people," but, like, we should have seen some more of the red flags, and I think it's a good reminder during this time. And so that the other thing to note, which we've sort of talked about with the cross training, putting people as staff on mentorship training, and just the growth and retention, and also making sure that we don't, we talk to them and we figure out what do you like, what do you not like, what are you good at, what observe what they're good at, giving them feedback. This is so critical because in the management and the delegation. If we don't grow as managers and delegators and leaders, then it's easy to have a high turnover and not, and then having to that institutional knowledge is lost. So be purposeful about this, and everyone you bring into your team, keep tabs on this and having a path for growth. The other thing that's important to note as we're getting close to the end is just considering the scope of what you're doing and communicating what that you are including, what you're not including. I think this is also very important as immigration attorneys in the Trump era, because go back and look at your contracts, your agreements. Make sure they're not too willy-nilly, like that it's like this is what's included, this is what's not included, because we could have a whole bunch of craziness that we hadn't anticipated. One of the things I remember is just like a lot of the processing times just went like tripled in some respects. And then so like, do you have the same flat fee for that? And because you're having to monitor the case. For example, we charge a maintenance fee for U visa pending because they could take 15 years, for example. But that or court cases, we used to be flat. We might go back to them, but we've been hourly. But like I've had a case and now it's admin closed, so who knows if it gets reopened, but since like 2010. What year is it? Okay, that's about 15 years. Yeah, so yikes. But anyway, so watch the scope of what you say you're covering, make sure your agreement is clear and consistent, and make sure there's continuity between what you say from the admin to the consult to the contract to the consistency in the lifeline of the case. Consider how you could scale processes by being more efficient. Like we've been leaning into our case management software, our CRM. Like, oh my goodness, I've had so many calls the last like 6 or 8 months just on how we can connect things and make things better. But I have belief and hope that at the end of it all, it's all going to be worth it. And it's going to be like, wow, I'm so happy I did that now, as opposed to like when things are insane. And so that like, I laid the groundwork, I built that foundation. And so those are the things to think about, and, just even doing an audit of, like, what's something you do on a like, what do you do every day? Where do you spend a lot of your time? Is it a lot of email drafting? Is it a lot of forwarding things? Is it a lot of reading emails? Is it consults? Like, how could you better use your time? Blocking it off, being more batching things, not letting your inbox be your to-do list. I was guilty of that this morning. I was supposed to have do not disturb, review all these PowerPoints and articles, and then I got sucked into the, the vortex of some clients, and then now I'm gonna have to do my do not disturb after this webinar and catch up. But like, oh, I will be remiss if I don't share a book that I am loving right now. It's called, and a really, really good friend told me about it this weekend, and The Wealthy Gardener. I'm like binging that right now. The Wealthy Gardener. It's like a dad telling his son, but he uses parables and then practical, and there's so many good quotes. Like I'm having a hard time doing it on Audible because I want to write all this stuff at the same time. But anyway, there's so many really good nuggets on here, and it's really about like financial success, but there's a lot of wisdom about management and delegation. And he has this concept of like the oh, it's like something about like a power hour or something like that, but he calls it something else. But it's like having that time to just get stuff done. And I've talked a lot about time management. I wrote a lot about that. I have a whole chapter about it in my book, but just like being very purposeful and it reminds me of the Eisenhower matrix of getting working on the important but not urgent. That's really what a lot of last year was for me, was important but not urgent, because I know that there's going to be a lot of urgent stuff starting. And I didn't know who, no, I don't know if anybody knew who was going to be the president, but like, you anticipate and prepare, just like that first slide I was mentioning about, so that regardless, you're prepared for those types of things. And Williams suggests Fireproof by Mike Morse. It's about creating and maintaining a healthy, sturdy law office. Okay, cool. Thanks for that. So going to the conclusion of your, path to thriving, be strategic about your preparation and your flexibility. That team culture is so important. Your client relationships are important. They'll come back to you. They'll recommend you. Just, show them that love, and be considerate. I know easily can when you get burnt out, it's easy. You're just like you feel like it's just the one more after another, but they're people. We're in this profession because we care. And I think the leveraging the technology is really where we can save a lot of time and headache and get ahead. I think that's really where those of us who want to find a way to stay doing this as much as we can and help as many people, and meet whatever our goals might be, being able to clock out a certain time or having work-life balance or having a true weekend. We'll see what happens the next 4 years, on the weekends of, usually that's Friday when we get all those announcements. But just I would say in conclusion, whether it's that exercise at the beginning about how can you identify possible threats and what you would do to mitigate those risks, to what's your AI policy and what how can you automate, eliminate, and delegate a lot of the things that you or other team members are doing, to resources and how have you cross-trained your team. Are you constantly making education a part of it? And other thing from like watching this webinar or watching CLEs or reading books like we were recommending right now. So I would say at the conclusion, just at least make a few to-do lists and block off some time, maybe later this week, to work on your business and put some things in action. And just remember that like with everything that's important, you do need to have those clear goals, and you need to break down those goals into smaller ones, and you need to hold yourself and your team accountable, by having deliverables and making sure that there's deadlines to things, because if you don't, then it'll just sort of dissipate and no one will finish it, including yourself. So make sure you have ways to measure that progress, and you'll be able to build your future ready practice to make it resilient. So feel free to connect in all different ways. I do give out some free first time law practice management consultation. If you want, you can reach out to me and my team. Definitely check out the Power Up Your Practice podcast. We're constantly getting cool, awesome. I'm learning so much, honestly. I'm getting like a little MBA by just all the people I talk to and having fun listening to people. And then definitely the book. It's 25 chapters. It's a whole nother book from my last one. It's got two on marketing, including digital marketing, time management, operations, leadership, all the different functions, hats, and roles, creating a path with your mission and vision, buying a building, it's got some financial, some technology chapter. I mean, there's like a whole lot in here. Even empowering your future personal and professional growth, and a partnership track and exit strategy. So it's a culmination of my practice, but also lots of books, lots of talking to people. Um, so thanks so much, and we're planning to bring back webinars on a monthly basis. So we'll continue to do that. Thanks. Have a great week and best of luck, everyone. Feel free to reach out. Take care.